Welcome to the Transportation Lien Forum, our Thursday, May 26th, 2022 edition. We have folks from across the United States, across Canada, and across Europe joining us today. So we're going to get started right now. I know that many of you are still logging in. Continue to do that, and thank you again for participating in this community of practice. This is a special session. They're all special in my heart, but this one in particular, we are celebrating 10 years of the Transportation Lien Forum, which started up in June 2012, and we'll talk more about that later on, because we're also going to talk about the next 10 years. The best is yet to come indeed, and we want to talk about not just the past 10 years, but what we can actually do together as a community of practice in the next 10 years. Our Transportation Lien Forum vision, which has been true for the past 10 years, is to provide a community for transportation agencies, folks in those transportation agencies, across the United States, across Canada, across Europe, truly across the world, to share and support each other regarding lien and continuous improvement. We have some wonderful sessions today, and we'll have lots of time for discussion in our live session. And a different way of looking at this. Why do we have a Transportation Lien Forum anyways? I think the great anthropologist Margaret Mead said it very well. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. Thank you for being part of that small group across the world where we're trying to make transportation agencies, the services we provide, more effective and efficient for the customers that we serve. Thank you. We have members from across North America and Europe. Every place you see a pin, and many of the pins overlap, there are members, and many of them will be on the session today. So welcome to everyone. I also invite you to check out the January 2022 Transportation Lien Forum recording. Was our most recent session. We usually go every other month, but we skipped March this year. The QR code will take you there. This recording and the presentation deck will be archived to the Transportation Lien Forum's lien interchange session. So you can use that QR code. If you don't have it right now, you can find the QR code later when we archive this. And invite you to check out on that same lien interchange website, the Transportation Lien Forum newsletter. Many of you receive that. If you don't, there's a way to sign up for it. And it provides information between our live teleconferences to support each other. If you have technology questions, Courtney or Stephen or Becca can help you. You see their emails there. And we're also going to put those emails in the chat pane for easy access. And celebration is a part of our community of practice. Feel free to applause. You can clap under reactions. You can put things in the chat pane. It's always great to appreciate each other. And we would like to know who's online. So I encourage you to actually put in the chat pane where you're tuning in from. And put your state, put your city, put your country, where you're tuning in from. We're going to accumulate those and put them in the notes for this session. And we have terrific presenters for our 10th anniversary session and for the launch of the next 10 years. We have Amanda Frank and John Romberger from PennDOT, Todd May from the Indiana DOT, Dean Schroeder, one of our affiliates who's joining us from Valparaiso University. And we have a special session right before our open forum where we can ask questions. We're going to talk about the last 10 years and the next 10 years some. And I encourage you to engage in all of that. Again, during the sessions, I encourage you to mute. At the end of each of the sessions, we'll have time for some questions and some comments, and of course, even more of that towards the end of our session today. And we'll get done by 10:45 Mountain Standard Time, or Mountain Daylight Time. First up, join me in welcoming Amanda and John from PennDOT. Amanda and John, take it away.
Thanks so much, Gary. John and I are both so excited to be here and presenting today. So I'm Amanda Frank, not John, and I'm a management analyst here at PennDOT's Bureau of Innovations.
And John Romberger, and I'm a management analyst at the Bureau of Innovations as well.
And we're really excited to share some information about our lien dashboard, especially since sharing lien successes in a short, straightforward format helps people at all levels of an organization better understand and relate to our agency's accomplishments. So today we're going to talk a little bit about, first just give you an overview of who PennDOT is and what business areas fall under our agency. Then we're going to talk about how we got our lien dashboard started and where we went from there. We want to show you our current lien dashboard and the good things it's doing for Pennsylvania employees at the Department of Transportation. We're going to talk about the data that we use to populate the dashboard, how we're trying to market it, and finally, what's next for this dashboard. So here's a graphic that represents all of the different areas, or even some of the different areas that PennDOT encompasses. We're a large organization. We have more than 11,000 people working for us, and over 7,100 of them work on our roadways. And we're involved in things like the maintenance, restoration, and expansion of our state highway system, but we also administer vehicle registrations and driver's license, and we oversee safety and emission inspections. We also oversee aviation, rail freight, public transportation, ports, pedestrian, and bicycle programs. So there's a lot of different programs that fall under the canopy of PennDOT here. Just a few of the great facts that you can see up on the screen that I want to point out. We have 40,000 miles of state maintained roadways, more than 25,000 bridges, and 85 billion annual vehicle miles traveled. So as I mentioned before, John and I work in the Bureau of Innovations, or BOI. If your state is anything like ours, we love our acronyms, or your province or your country. So we're big on acronyms. You'll hear a few more as the presentation goes on today. In BOI, we have a staff of about 10 full-time employees who are dedicated to the type of work that you can see up here on the screen. In BOI, we evaluate and we aid in the transformation of processes and procedures. And we guide and support organizations who might be looking to reduce costs, make some performance improvements, maximize the use of their available resources, improve quality of products and services, or even increase their safety. On the screen, this is actually a screenshot from our Bureau of Innovations, our BOI portal, which is an internal website that's run through SharePoint that's available to all PennDOT employees. So you can see some of the services that we offer here, anything from facilitation for projects of all different sizes, and also process mapping and data mining and analytics. So BOI also administers our State Transportation Innovation Council, our STIC, and our PennDOT Agility Program. And we regularly highlight the PennDOT innovations that we do through various communications. Some of those things include newsletters and Lien spotlights, which are emails that go out to all employees with videos or reference sheets, or sometimes just a message talking about different Lien practices. We have our PennDOT Lien Community of Practice, where we gather Lien leaders from all over the department. And our public-facing Focus on Innovations publication, you can see a screenshot of that here on the screen, and that's spotlighting both our STIC and our homegrown innovations. So now we wanted to give you some background on Lien itself at PennDOT and across the state. So we at PennDOT have been using different types of continuous process improvement methodology for more than 30 years now. Lien itself began to take root back in 2018, and around the time that the Governor's Office of Performance through Excellence, OPE, championed Lien. They were created in February 2018. Throughout 2018, OPE works with different state agencies, including PennDOT, to launch their own Lien programs. And that's when PennDOT really started to adopt the Lien methodology and terminology and sharing that out with our employees. So you can see on our page here, we were creating and deploying different types of program materials in support of this around August 2018. By 2019, Pennsylvania's Governor Tom Wolf, is scheduling calls with different agency heads to talk about Lien and to get a conversation going about what's happening with continuous process improvement in each of the agencies. And those start around June 2019. It was at this time that BOI starts preparing a lot of different Lien highlights that we can share with our secretary, so that she has all of the details of some of the Lien things going on within the agency that she doesn't already know about. As these regular calls continue, and we continue to capture and build out the different highlights for the secretary, it really started to become clear to us that we needed to employ some standard work to make it easier to not only collect the information that we were providing to the secretary, but also display the information so that she would easily be able to see what's happening with Lien at a glance during her calls. That takes us to October 2020, when we launched our first Lien dashboard. And here it is. So this is our first generation Lean dashboard. It was created in Microsoft Excel with a lot of different tabs that were feeding the data into the different boxes you see here on the screen. We took into account different types of Lean projects that PennDOT was reporting on, Lean successes, and things that were different metrics that we were looking at. We also looked at different Lean trainings. So on the top of the row here within the screen, you can see we have a bar that's labeled projects. In the pie chart on the left, that's just talking about our different types of Lean projects. And you can see when we launch the dashboard, there's a lot of yellow there. We do a lot of just do it projects, things that we can easily accomplish right off the bat. In the middle chart, you can see that there's it's a bar chart, and it's showing that that our district offices in that tallest column are our biggest contributors to the projects that we're reporting out to the governor's office. That's in part because they are the biggest part of our community of practice of Lean leaders that I mentioned a little while ago. So they're the ones that are out there with their boots on the ground, collecting these projects, seeing the work in action, and being able to bring them back and report on them. On the far right there, we have a chart just showing which projects are completed, in progress, or stalled, which is how we were reporting on them at the time this dashboard was produced. At this point in time, we're really just reporting on completed projects. Down in the next row, you see that there's a bar that the middle bar says training, and that's really for that first set of graphs on the left, talking about both the number of PennDOT employees trained and the percentage of PennDOT employees trained. And I would say those numbers have stayed fairly consistent since the time we created this dashboard. We have some required trainings for new employees to take when they come into PennDOT to teach them about the basics of Lean and to also talk them through how to do their own 5S project. In the center of the chart, we have our highlights and on the horizon sections. This is really our freeform section where we could go into some more details about things that are happening on a monthly basis, so that if there was something we needed to explain a little further that couldn't be explained by the charts and the data, that we would be able to dig into them here. To the right, you see our metrics. At this time, we're reporting on time saved, on dollars saved, and quality or throughput improved. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see our accomplishments timeline, and this just was going back to when the governor's office was created back in February, or the governor's office of performance through excellence was created in February 2018 through what was around the present time at that time, just hitting on some of the milestones that we thought were some of PennDOT's biggest Lean accomplishments. So for a first attempt at a dashboard, we were really happy with some of the things it did. It shared a lot of information all in one place and made it very easy to replicate and be able to provide data at a moment's notice. We also were really happy that we could gather data and share information about what different areas of PennDOT, different business areas of PennDOT were doing. Some of the challenges, and I'm sure you noticed this right off the bat, it was a very limited amount of space. We have a lot of information crammed into one page. So because of that, we weren't really able to dig in and do more, give more information about what our field locations were doing. And finally, one of the biggest challenges we ran into is because, as you may remember, I mentioned this was in Excel, because we were consistently copying and pasting very, very large data sets into the Excel file, it itself was starting to become very unstable and producing unreliable data when we reproduced the dashboard. And so when we realized this first generation dashboard was no longer working for us, we knew that's when it was time to make a change. And so that's when I approached John and asked him to lend his expertise. So John, I'll turn it over to you, and let's go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. Yeah, as Amanda showed you, we had a lot of information on one page. We tried so hard to get everything on one page. And then what we realized was that, it would look a lot better if we just expanded it to 2-page to reduce the clutter. So then we did that and gave it a more modern look. As Amanda mentioned, we are using Power BI, which is an application that we've been using in BOI for some other things. So it was easy to build the dashboard using that, which gives us some more reliability and some more flexibility down the road for things that we want to do in the future. And then we were able to incorporate that project data from the highway field locations as well. And then we've moved the key metrics that Amanda had talked about to the top of the first page. So if you go to the next slide, please. This is our new dashboard. So across the top, we have our key metrics. So you'll see that we're tracking hours saved per year, our average improvement, cost avoidance, annual cost savings, and the total number of projects. Then you'll see below we have a chart that tracks the projects by deputate. We find that competition is a good motivator. So when folks are seeing this and they see other deputates are doing more projects, that we're hoping that that motivates them to take on some more. It also helps us to understand where we need to lend more support from BOI to help with those projects. And then over to the right, you'll see that we are tracking our projects by district, our engineering districts throughout the state. And they're in the lower right-hand corner. These are all elements that were on our original dashboard, but they're in the right-hand corner. We're tracking the projects by project type. And as Amanda mentioned, our Just Do It projects are the most popular ones. And that's really because here at PennDOT, we've always, even before we adopted Lien, we've always had a culture of continuous improvement. So employees have been encouraged to identify where they need to make improvements and just do them. So this is page 1 of the Lien dashboard. This is the second page. So we took the milestones of a Lien adoption, and that is the top part of this dashboard, where you see accomplishments. And so that's updated as more milestones occur. And then the purple box there is the highlights. Those are the Lien initiatives that occurred that past month, and not just Lien projects, but other initiatives. We have we had an awards program ceremony. We do a lot of other things to support Lien that we would put on there. And also there on the below that is the on the horizon, and those are upcoming initiatives that are occurring in the next month or so. And then over to the right are our trainings. So we keep track of how many trainings Lien trainings our employees have taken. So we have a number of different trainings. We have a Lien awareness training. We have a Lien 5S training. We have some other Lien trainings, and we've also started an internal Lien certification. So folks who are really interested in Lien, they can go through a process, do a few projects, and get an internal certification. That is something that at the Commonwealth has just begun. I'll talk a little bit about the data sources. So we have Lien leaders in each of our districts, and they are responsible for promoting Lien within the district, finding out about projects, and then entering those projects into a form that's on SharePoint, and that's where we're pulling the data, and then regarding projects. And then the Office of Administration, they keep track of all of our all trainings that employees take, but we get the training data for Lien trainings and pull that into our Power BI model. And then lastly, here internally at BOI, we're just monitoring Lien initiatives, and that's what we're using to update that milestone at the top and the highlights and on horizon text boxes that you saw on the previous slide. We can talk a little bit, we talked a little bit about this, but yeah, we've been using Power BI instead of Excel. It actually, once we had everything set up, it's become, it used to take us several hours to get the dashboard together. Now, once we just refresh the files, literally press a button, and we have our new month of Lien dashboard ready to go. So it's been very easy to update.
So as I mentioned before, we have a BOI portal, and there's another page of our portal shown here. Here we have our Lien dashboard shared with PennDOT employees. So we upload a new version of the dashboard to the portal once a month so that all employees can access it. It's shared for just an internal audience. But in addition to that, we also felt it was important to make sure that that our key stakeholders at PennDOT were aware of the new dashboard. So we email it out to a group of people as well, including some executive leadership and some BOI stakeholders. And we share it with our Lien leaders, that community of practice that we talked about before, in a Microsoft Teams group that we have for them so that they get a preview of the dashboard each month as it's coming out. So in the spirit of continuous process improvement, we're always looking for ways that we can improve our dashboard. John and I are considering doing some things moving forward, such as maybe making some technology improvements, maybe creating an interactive dashboard that allows users to drill down to certain levels of data. We want to evaluate how the dashboard is being used first so that we know is the juice worth the squeeze, as I've heard people say. We want to make sure that people are using the dashboard, that we're not putting a lot of time and energy into something that that's already meeting people's needs. So we want to determine the effectiveness of what we have out there. We want to make sure that our customers are getting truly useful information. We want to explore opportunities to better market our dashboard as well and get the word out even more than what we're already doing. And we want to provide some hands-on support to our organizations, help them better understand our organizations better understand how they can leverage the information in the Lien dashboard and apply it to their own work areas. So that about wraps up our Lien dashboard presentation. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk a little bit about it here with you. Here are some of the ways you can follow PennDOT. And next slide, please. And here is John and my contact information as well that you can reach out to us. So thank you. Any questions for us?
Yeah, Amanda and John, thank you. And we do have a few minutes for a few questions here. And of course, we'll have an open forum where you can ask more questions later. From the chat pane, and I encourage anybody to unmute if you have questions too, but from the chat pane, Marianne Hayes says, is your dashboard on your internet available to the public, or is it just an internet for employees only?
It is just an internet for employees only. So this is not something that we're sharing with the public at this time.
Okay. All right. Appreciate that. There were some very nice compliments, by the way. You know, Dean noted like the way you present the evolution. There were several other very nice compliments in the chat pane. How about questions that folks might have? Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away to Amanda and John. We do have one in the chat pane. I know that not everybody can unmute. What did you feel was the biggest challenge you faced?
I think we can both answer that since John and I handled different pieces of this. I think one of the biggest challenges was really deciding what information was the most important, especially with that first generation dashboard where we did have limited space. And then when we got that extra amount of space for the second version of the dashboard, what truly belongs in here, what's going to make the biggest impact for our stakeholders. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd also probably say agreeing on a color scheme, but yeah, really, yeah, just identifying what were the key metrics and making sure that those were right there at the top and easy to recall. Once somebody takes a quick look at it, they see them right there. So.
Okay, thanks. Peter Locke has a question. One metric you displayed is time savings. Are these time savings related to internal staff or external clients or both?
So these are reported mainly for internal staff, although it's on a project by project basis. So if we had a project going on where there would be time savings with either a consultant or someone from another agency, if we're able to save time in a process through the work that they're doing, that would also be included. But I would say the majority, at least 90%, if not more of it, is PennDOT time savings itself.
Robin Rust in the chat pane asked, can you talk about how you keep the data updated, who enters it, how often do you expect updates?
Absolutely. So we do a monthly update for the dashboard. Our community of what we call them our Lien leaders, they are entering projects all the time on a rolling basis. So as a project is completed, they enter it into a document that's monitored by the Governor's Office of Performance through Excellence. It's called the Lien Good News Report. So they share their project information in the Lien Good News Report. And then each month we pull a new report from the data that's entered into that, and we use that to populate the project data. The training data is also kept up, and that's actually through a different office here at Pennsylvania that's run through our Office of Administration, where our training people work. And for them, they at the end of each month will produce a new report, and that's forwarded on to us. So we use that as well.
Thanks again. I encourage you to stick around. There may be more questions for you in the open forum portion of the presentation. And everybody, I do encourage you to utilize your applause buttons if you like the session. So thanks for doing that, Amanda and John. Courtney, next. And our second presentation is from the Indiana Department of Transportation, Todd May. Todd, take it away.
Great. So thank you, Gary. Let me make sure that my video is on. And I wanted to say that I really appreciate being asked and included to the Transportation Lien Forum group. It's a pleasure. And Gary, I asked me, and when I accepted, I realized that I had presented it seems like not too long ago, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't regurgitate some things, but the one thing that I'll say at the outset is that when we stood up the Department of Innovation, the first visit that we made, or that I made, to learn about innovation was to PennDOT, and they have now set the bar again to what I want to do with innovation. And so really well done, and really the dashboard is fantastic. But I wanted to share with you all some lessons that we have learned over the last 3 years. And I like to put up our mission statement, not necessarily to bore folks with what our mission statement is, but to remind me that within our mission statement and within all the words, the word all is by far the most important piece of our mission statement. When we stood this up, it was really in response, when we stood the department up, it was really in response to some feedback that we had gotten regarding our employees and trust and being heard and listened to and whatnot. And we really want to focus on the fact that we are gathering information from all levels within NDOT, regardless of tenure, regardless of position. We want to make sure that we're listening and we're hearing, and that sharing of ideas is really permeates all of the levels within our DOT. So over the last 3 years, and including a really challenging year for us in pandemic, we've had almost 400 ideas that have come into the innovation department. We collect ideas in a couple of ways. We have an internal facing website where folks can go in and they can either enter ideas for themselves, or they can enter ideas on behalf of others that they have seen work in the field, or if somebody is not necessarily adept or have the facilities to place their innovation in the website, or they can send them in a handwritten form that comes in as an idea. But over the last 3 years, what we've realized in looking back is that there's 3 buckets that the ideas seemingly naturally flow into. And the 3 buckets I have arranged here are really from the fewest ideas to the most ideas. That's not saying that one group is more important than the other. It's just a pure quantitative look. The process changers for us, two examples are contract closeout and what's called a saximeter. And folks may be familiar with the piece of equipment that's called a saximeter. This is a piece of equipment, and I'll touch on it later, but it's used in the construction of bridges and pile driving piers and whatnot. This was a true process changer for us, both as an agency as well as our partnership with our contractors and others. Our contract closeout was submitted by a group of folks who recognized that our contract closeout process prior was really, really tough. It was paper driven. We had folks that were carrying boxes and boxes of file folders, and this has moved us to, for this portion of our business, almost 100% paper free. The next bucket is the Nike projects that I like to call them. These are the ideas that tend to come in, and when we see them, they just are intuitive. They make sense. There's no doubt in our minds that this is something that, as an agency, that we need to implement. A lot of times, these Nike projects revolve around safety ideas. They come in from our field force, not only what we call our highway technicians, that are the folks that are out doing the crack sealing and potholing and trash, et cetera, but these are also coming in from departments such as our permits department that are out doing billboard inventories or investigating areas that work is to be performed, et cetera. One that some or most of you may be familiar with that was news to us or new to us is a piece of equipment called a Pie-Lite. It's a sequential road flare. They're LED lights that can be placed magnetically on vehicles. They can also be placed under cones. These were game changers for us. We have moved to, this is, when it came across, was an absolute no questions asked, let's move forward with this. It's a great safety addition. The second is just adding additional reflective material and chevrons to not only our snow plows and our dump trucks and street sweepers, but to all of our vehicles. This was tough to quantitatively measure of the safety aspect, or did it save us in accidents, but it certainly has provided us a level of safety above and beyond for near misses, our visibility on the roadways. And again, this extends out to not just the large pieces of equipment or our attenuators and dump trucks, but this extends to the passenger vehicles or the pickup trucks, et cetera, for additional safety. What I'm going to spend most of my time on really is a more indicative of our mission statement. And these are the field-driven needs. These are the ones that our folks are doing absolutely every day. They see an issue and they address the issue. They may figure out a solution utilizing what they have on hand. And it's coming from a direction of necessity. They see it as necessary to perform their daily duties, to stay safe, to increase productivity, to do something faster or more efficiently. And so these field-driven ideas, again, harken back to that all levels of information and all levels of our organization providing us ideas that are coming in to be considered. So as I said, these are the ones that folks are owning innovation, and they're doing it every day. They're seeing opportunities to do things in a better, safer, faster, or easier way. But this main bullet point I want to just say is the most important that we have heard from our field tours. And that's the communication is really key. It's also one of our biggest challenges. Indiana we're divided into 6 districts, and essentially 2 north, 2 central, and 2 in the southern part of our state. communication between our districts is a challenge. What may be working in the southern part of the state and working extraordinarily well has never been heard of in the northern part of the state. So sharing those successes and those failures or challenges is really, really integral to implementation, to adoption, to recognition, and really moving us to the next level. A good idea that folks do not feel comfortable with or isn't pushed forward or investigated and put into practice. I struggled. I initially put in the word worthless, and I thought, well, it has worth to somebody. But if we're siloing off ideas and we're holding these ideas, it to the agency becomes something that just dies on the vine eventually, because it's not shared. It's not a way that we get better. It's not a way that we recognize our employees. And we also need to know that anything that is new to us is an innovation to the state. If it's new to us, it's new to us. And I say that a lot, and that just because somebody says, oh, well, Ohio has been doing that for 10 years and we've never done it, that's new. That's new technology. That's new ways of us to think about things. Big struggle is limiting the bureaucracy within DOTs. We all face that. But again, it goes back to that communication, and really, if we do these 4 things where we focus on improvement and focus on how to do things better, faster, or safer, the net result is an increase in morale and an increase in involvement. The secondary piece is employee retention, employee engagement, and we see that more and more and more as innovations, whether they're large or small, whether they fit into one of those 3 buckets or not, is absolutely palpable. You just can't not see it, so to speak. So as we started looking at our innovations that have been implemented, really they fall into 3 sub buckets that permeate across all of them, and it's pride, it's trust, and it's impact. Our folks, when they are named winners or they have won an innovation award, their name is displayed outside not only where they work, but also our main district offices. Shame on me, and it was a learning for me. We wanted to have small signs made for them to take home. I will tell you, the 12-inch sign that they take home as a bit of a trophy, they are more proud of those than almost anything we can do. And it's just that I share that in that not only are they proud of what they're doing when it comes to innovation, but it's proud that they have won and they've contributed to the DOT. They're proud of what they do with NDOT and PennDOT and pick your DOT. I can't tell you how often I've had people who, when you ask them, what's an area you worked on, they say, well, I built that interstate. I helped build that bridge. And they truly have pride in what they're doing. Impact, I've touched on a little bit, but folks really want us to be better. They want us to be good stewards of taxpayer money. They want to be good stewards of our equipment. They want to be good stewards of our roadways. And that impact is always present. They see the opportunity to be better. But we can't get to either one of those if we don't live in that foundation of where our 4 core values as an agency, including innovation, revolves around. And we've seen that. So I want to touch a little bit on how some specific innovations really speak to those 3 buckets of pride, trust, and impact. So one thing I have also learned, other than trying to be like PennDOT, is that signposts are truly the duct tape of a DOT. Folks will reuse signposts to make about anything and to make it better. This is about a $12 and material fix that has had an impact across our agency and with our maintenance staff, specifically addressing safety and efficiency. And it's just simply a tailgate crop. Within this unit, what they identified was that they were spending a fair amount of time removing tailgates to clean out their trucks. The tailgate removal, they're heavy, it's dangerous. So they figured out a way to have this tailgate prop as a bit of an upgrade that removes those dangers from smashed fingers, smashed hands, broken fingers, etc. The nice part is that they didn't just stop at the initial design. When they first put this in, it was pretty crude, and they went forward and actually improved their own innovation on themselves, adding some additional pins and slots so that it was even safer than the original. So this has now moved to other garages and other shops as a standard piece of equipment, and we're working with a machine shop to be able to mass produce these safety aspects. They're storable. They can slide behind the seat of a dump truck. They can absolutely be universally used. And what we've also seen is a reduction in our safety reports or safety incidents reports when it comes to this activity of cleaning trucks, but also the time to get things done is as far as cleaning the trucks and being better at cleaning the truck beds out has increased. We do a score of basically basic maintenance, and cleaning is one of them, and we've seen those scores where these are being used increased. So the impact is absolutely inarguable. Another one is there's going to be a video that clicks up, but this is another recycle of signposts. What they identified, the group identified, was storing our snow plows on the ground increased the amount of rust. It created a problem of moving. It created a situation where if we had, for instance, a late season lake effect snow, that they could hook up plows much quicker and unhook much quicker. They can also, keeping the plows off the ground, it reduces, again, the corrosion aspect. This is the impact of this, again, has spread to our maintenance groups where they have a larger snow force. It has cleaned up our yards, which we had an area where we would store them kind of universally where they would all stand up, but it makes it more visually appealing. So I think if you click next, it will bring up the video, and I don't know if you'll have to click it again for the video to move. And before you click it to move, I will say this is also an example where we fostered trust. At the end of this video, or toward the end, what you'll see is a gentleman come up to test the stability of it and essentially try to rock the snow plow off of the base. When we saw that, it prompted a phone call to say, let's don't do that. That's not the safest thing. Great idea. I appreciate your trust in what you've built, but let's make sure that we're doing things in a safe manner. The aspect is it also allows for the truck to hook and unhook the snow plow much easier than and in a much faster way. So this is a fantastic piece of equipment and kind of a Rube Goldberg way that this gentleman in one of our testing labs developed. So this is a splash shield that goes around for soil compaction. Basically, they put soil or material within where this 5-gallon bucket is, and they put a substrate or a liquid in. They compress it. They test the compaction and calibration. What two things about this. The reason why he developed this was, in his words, and when he submitted the idea, he was tired of having to clean up the mess of the liquid and the mud and going around his shop. So he developed this. He took then the next step and actually ran two tests in utilizing both this splash shield and without the splash shield. And he was extraordinarily happy to see that on the right, you'll see, and it's tough to make out, that the compaction calibrations were exactly the same as they were with and without the shield. The best part about this for me and is that we felt like that this guy was destined to work with in our testing lab with rocks and with stone and whatnot, because his name is Tony Stone Rock, and it just felt like some sort of destiny that he was there. But the pride in developing this, and again, he took the time to do this himself. These are recycled brushes from a street sweeper in a 5-gallon bucket, and the amount of time to clean up has gone away. The shop is absolutely spotless. And the other result is that he and the shop can actually move faster and do more tests because they are more efficient because they don't have to clean up. So we all deal with silica dust in at least in the state of Indiana. And this is a dump bin where they may be dumping different stone, different rock, or whatever. I will point out just behind the red arrow, or the red arrow is pointing at the airflow, which creates a negative airflow within the lab. But the lab folks, when they brought this forward, they said, we appreciate the fact that we're still passing all of the OSHA requirements for silica dust exposure, but we're still seeing dust around the shop. And if we can contain that dust, and if we can contain that material, the wear and tear on our equipment and what the shop is going to look like, and we can now have tours of folks and not worry about people coming through the lab and getting dirty, et cetera. So this is, again, recycled sheet signs or wayfinding signs. One is a 35-mile-an-hour sign, and the other is a one-way sign. A small handle and a piano hinge. And you'll notice at the around the bottom of the 5-gallon bucket, you'll see the dust that is actually captured. And I will tell you, when we saw this, we were initially a little reticent to embrace this idea because we wondered if there was an additional problem or that we weren't seeing. But this was purely out of pride that the lab folks developed this, because they wanted to be able to have a work area that they can bring other people. And they've actually done tours and field trips with the local schools where they weren't comfortable before because kids would get dirty or whatever. They could now have kids and field trips that come through. Again, they're proud of what they do, and they're proud of how they're doing it. Go ahead, next. And this is just additional pictures. Okay, next. This by far is the area that I absolutely love, where we spend a lot of time, and it's in the area of trust. So trust, this first picture on the far left and kind of the ratchet air compressor and the hose that you see is a hand drawing that we received in our first year of a gentleman who wanted to be able to not have wear and tear on our air compressor hoses. It did not win our first year. He trusted in the process, went back to the drawing board, so to speak, and go ahead, next. He then built out of signpost a way to keep air compressor hoses off of the pavement. What we've seen is that this went from a very low vote getting. We have a peer group that votes on innovation ideas. It went from a very low to actually winning this past year. This group of maintenance folks not only had trusted in the process that we would realize that what they're doing is good for the agency, but it's also good for his coworkers because dragging the hose is heavy, it's fatiguing, the risk of slip, trips, and falls. But also the unit that has implemented these, they went from something like 3 or 4 hoses a year because of all the crack seal and bridge work that they were doing to they've utilized the same hose the entire year. It seems like a small amount, but it absolutely is a huge amount of impact to the agency. But the trust that they had in moving it forward and trusting in the process too, and the pride that they had. Okay, next. So I touched on the saximeter before, and this gentleman, his name is Tom Brummett, and Tom has been with us for 35 years, and he trusted in the process. And again, this was the absolute lowest voted idea that we got in our first year. He went back, he educated the folks on its use. He educated the Innovation Council. He educated his director and his deputy commissioner. And at the end of this year, he absolutely came forward and it was the top winner. And when I say it was the top winner, this piece of equipment that changed the process for NDOT, and not only for NDOT, but this is going into all of our contracts for our contractors' use when we're building when we're building bridges. When I told him, I drove down to Vincennes, which is in the southern part of the state. I think he thought he was in trouble because I said, I'm coming down and I need to talk to you. And when I told him, Tom, the saximeter is our top winner and congratulations. He looked at me, he got tears in his eyes, and he said, this has made my career. So after 35 years, here's a gentleman who's built dozens of bridges and worked with us for 35 years. That's the secret sauce, and that's the trust that we have had. And it's really, really been something that, it keeps us going as innovation, as an innovation group, and as NDOT moving forward. So next, last slide. I will just say that, it's sometimes and I am very guilty of this. I keep pushing I want metrics, I want more information, I want numbers, I want this, and that's all great. And that's where we need to live to make sure that we're getting our ROI and make sure that we're doing the right things. But the empathetic guideposts, those kind of squishy things that we don't necessarily have a way of measuring, those empathetic guideposts of recognition and communication, the morale and the implementation absolutely are the secret sauce that will drive innovation and drive success within the group. So thanks for everybody for listening. I'm happy to share with you other things and other ideas and answer any questions. I think the next is my contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out.
Todd, thanks. Terrific stuff there from the Hoosier State. We have time for just maybe a question or two. Todd, I encourage you to look at the chat pane. Lots of wonderful comments coming in about the innovation system that you've got, trust, and those kind of things. Does anybody want to unmute a question or two before we roll on to Dean Schroeder? All right, well, Todd, I'm going to encourage you to stay around. We're going to have an open forum session later where everybody can ask all kinds of questions, make comments. Thanks again. Courtney, let's go to the next slide. Our next presenter is one of our affiliates, Dean Schroeder from Valparaiso University. Dean, take it away.
Thank you, Gary. It is always great to participate in the Lien Transportation Lien Forum and to attend and learn from all the different speakers. The two today so far are great. As a matter of fact, there's so many touch points on what I'm going to say that link with that is kind of funny. What I'm going to talk about is the result of one of the larger, if not the largest, most extensive studies of continuous improvement in government. And it came about a little bit by accident. Next slide. We did not, we can't cover everything, but we're going to cover about 3 or 4 of the big findings. When we first ran into this, this study first started about 8 years ago. And we started getting a lot of calls from people, next slide, from people in government who were interested in the work we had done in the past. Now, the work we'd done in the past was primarily in the private sector. And we had worked with government agencies and public sector agencies. But one of the things we found is we found the private sector approaches didn't always work in the government sector. Didn't always work in the government sector. There was something different about government. Next slide, please. So being researchers, what we decided is, well, let's take a look at this. So we went into the literature, and guess what? Nothing was written on the difference between public and private that was really meaningful for us when it came to continuous improvement, lean, those type of areas. So we started looking around, and what started out just as an idle curiosity, we said, hey, maybe we can get an article out of this. And then pretty soon we're a full-blown study rolling out over 6 years. And the interesting thing is this is also the 6-year period where we saw a lot of growth in continuous improvement in government. So some of the companies that next slide, some of the organizations we actually ended up including in our book wouldn't have even hit the radar screen when we started at the beginning of our study because they were just starting or hadn't even started or they were so early. But it was a 6-year study, grounded theory research approach. For those of you that don't know what this is basically, rather than sending out a questionnaire or doing multiple case studies, it's a process that rolls out where you go out and see. You try to have a minimum of predilections going in. You go out and see what's actually working, what's not, and then you form theories and propositions. And as you go and visit more organizations, you refine and refine and refine until it pretty much settles down. So we ended up with 77 government organizations, from small departments to entire states or provinces, 5 different countries, United States, Canada, Sweden, England, Denmark. We had got into some very interesting organizations. It's interesting to get into the Defense Department of Sweden, for example, who is soon going to be one of our NATO allies, of course. But over 1,000 interviews. So it was quite extensive. We tracked some of the programs that we're developing that looked like they had high potential. We tracked them over the 6-year period and could see them change and grow and evolve. Next slide, please. We're going to focus on one of the things. Guess what we discovered? No surprise here. CI in government does not behave the same way as it does in business. Government is not a business. Next slide, please. Some of the approaches that work well in lean on the business side, where we draw a lot of our lean lessons from, do work well in government, but some need to be modified. A lot of them need to be modified. You tweak it to fit. You normally tweak it to fit every organization, but there's a bigger jump in the contextual element of government. And some don't work very well at all. But you know what we also found? We also found a number of novel approaches that different government organizations were using that government can learn from. And that was kind of fun to see where government led the way. Next slide, please. Finding one. Improvement efforts driven by management and professional staff, which we've been talking about a lot of these larger things, are more challenging in government. Things that, for example, a rapid improvement event that can be done in a couple of weeks in the private sector will also often take months, 6, 7, 8 months before it's completed in the public sector. Why is that? Next slide. Why is it? Well, government is different. Government has a different, more complex mission. It has a unique set of checks and balances. Answers to a diverse constituency with conflicting interests, different nature of leadership. We have political leadership at the top, which doesn't always come in with deep understanding of how the mechanisms of the organization they're going to be running actually work. So we run into issues there with leadership, different nature of leadership, also different structure, culture, and workforce. In other words, Government is not a business. And for those improvement people that say we should behave more like a business, if we go too far in that direction, we're creating a new set of problems. We have to have an improvement approach that fits government. And it can draw from business. You know what we're finding after this book? We found that business can draw from government too. Next slide, please. Second finding, this is a big one. If it's more difficult at the top of the organization, where is the real action? Where can it be done? And the interesting thing here we found is the key to the high performers. These are the units that really perform well. Is improvement was happening. The main champions, main heroes, if we can, were the frontline leaders. The frontline managers and supervisors were the ones driving organizational improvement. Let me show you how this works a little bit. Look at the next slide, please. One of our favorite examples came in, our favorite cases came in from the Denver Department of Excise and Licensing. When Stacy Lax was appointed by Mayor Hancock, Michael Hancock, to take over the department, she walked in and the temperature couldn't get below 85 degrees. There were so many people waiting in line that the air conditioner couldn't keep up. It was just jammed. So she knew she had a problem right from the beginning. It turns out the average wait, which they didn't know, she had to set up and measure it. The average wait was 1 hour and 40 minutes with peak times to get a license. They're doing 70, 80 different types of licenses for thousands of licenses a year. Some of these need to be re-upped annually. And it's taken 1 hour and 40 minutes average to wait to get the license with peaks of 5 and 6 hours. Well, they got it down to less than 7 minutes in 18 months. And they did it predominantly with small frontline ideas. These would be what you might consider Nike ideas if we use language from Todd. They're just do it. They're just do it. They're ideas that come up from the front lines. They're small. They're small. Now you think, there's no excitement over small ideas. Next slide, please. Small ideas don't get any respect. They're the Rodney Dangerfield, if you're old enough to remember Rodney Dangerfield, they get no respect. Next slide, please. They're not big, they're not exciting, but what small ideas do have is they're quick, they're easy to implement, they're very low risk. What if you have a small idea and it fails? You haven't spent hundreds of hours and gone through the process of trying to get funding and support only to find an idea doesn't work. What? You fix it. Well, as a matter of fact, we had some examples of that just in Todd's presentation, where the original design of the hose holder was kind of complicated. It looked like it was feeding through a pipe or something like that. In the end, it was just nice and simple. We saw it in his example of the gate catcher for the dump trucks. There's a continuous improvement. Very low risk, very low risk. They don't need much in the form of permission and resources either. So you can just do it. In essence, they fly under the radar screen. They don't run into the conflict, the resistance, the permissions needed, all that larger improvements often run into. They don't run into that resistance. They just slide under the radar. Now, next slide, please. The interesting thing there is they're small. They might be tiny, but they have a surprisingly large punch. Let's look at this for a while. This is something we often miss. We're hinted at it in some of the earlier presentations. Next slide, please. Small ideas, small frontline ideas have a surprising impact. Why? One of the reasons is because they are repeated so many times. How many times was that plow chain improvement used? Every time. Next slide, please. An example out of Denver. One of the problems they were having was they had a computer and printer set up for people that were coming in and needed to do background checks. Background checks for liquor licenses, for restaurant licenses, for security guards. Security guards were going nuts at the time we studied it. Why? Because of the nature of legalizing marijuana. They were one of the first states to legalize marijuana, and all of a sudden that had a whole lot of consequences. But the problem was that the software that ran these that you needed to run these credit checks was not very user-friendly. So people would get stuck and they'd have to interrupt one of the licensed technicians. And it would take about 5 minutes to go and solve it and get it going. So the idea was some of the licensed technicians got together in about a half an hour time. They put together a brand new instruction manual with screenshots and arrows pointing to what you had to do next. It was pretty clear. What they did is they saved 5 minutes each interruption, 36 interruptions per day. Calculate that out, that's 750 hours per year. Now, that one little idea, 750 hours that can save, that can now be used for lessening that line. Next slide. Couldn't resist this. This is out of Gary's operation, CDOT, his Lean Everyday Ideas. One of the teams, one of the work teams, the patrols as they call them, came up with an idea. It takes 2 hours for 2 employees to mount or remove a wing plow. Okay, 2 hours. One of the teams came up with built a cart out of pieces of metal and it basically set it up. Wing plow goes on top of the cart. They roll it out. They line it up. They've got quick connects. It's all set up for rapid exchange. They reduced the time needed from 6 minutes down to 6 minutes for one employee. But as Todd talked about when dealing with plows, there's a whole lot of safety involved. So there's a lot of safety improvement. Next slide. Another issue with small ideas, the sheer quantity of small ideas means they accumulate, the cumulative impact is enormous. Now, we heard from Amanda that the small ideas, the just do it's were the most popular. Well, they should be. They're highly available. Let's look at the next slide, which is ADOT, Arizona Department of Transportation, in their Arizona management system. One of the things they did that was kind of interesting is when they launched it, when the governor launched it, what he did was they came up with what they called a mile wide and a mile deep. They trained at the high level and rolled it down. That's the mile wide. Every employee got trained and they rolled it down over a few years, but they also went deep. And one of the first examples they ran into, they picked a spot that was problematic, which was the 51st Avenue Motor Vehicle Division Service Center. Service Center was so bad that people would show up with grandma, they'd show up with their kids, their dogs. Why? Because they knew they were going to be there all day. They showed up with boom boxes, they showed up with food, they showed up, the place was a mess and chaotic. Well, what they did is that was the mile deep. They put a team of professionals and managers and professional staff on it, and they started trying to clean it up as their mile deep. And what they found is all of a sudden one event came along, which they realized, guess what? The guys on the front line, those people on the front line know more about what's going on than we do. And so they started emphasizing that. The team we were looking at had a huddle board. They were averaging 12 ideas, implemented ideas per person per year. In other words, everyone had an idea a month. Think about that. That's one little team. They had 120 ideas implemented. Little ideas oftentimes, but what they do is they incrementally correct the problems they have. They move customer wait time from an average of 73 minutes with peaks of 3 hours down to 75% of customers were being served within 15 minutes. Next slide. Just to give you an example of what is possible, one of our favorites outside of the industry is Carl Stork's endoscope, outside of government, excuse me. They average 75 implemented ideas per employee. Imagine that, every employee getting an average of 75 implemented ideas per year. What the CEO tells us is, he said, we could not produce the products we do without our employee ideas. So what they're dealing with is cutting edge research that they're doing things that virtually nobody else can do. Endoscopes, of course, are look at internal cameras that go internal, and are very sophisticated. And but it just shows you what's possible. We're not talking about a few ideas here. We're talking about lots of ideas for frontline, but you got to be set up to do it. Next slide, please. Last one I want to touch on is incremental ideas are the key to rapid organizational learning. Next slide, please. Normal improvement rate of an organization, including management-driven ideas, including new technology, turns out to be between 1% and 3%. That's the average. That means half of the organizations are below that. Now, what we've discovered is that organizations that work with their frontline ideas, frontline people to come up with all these small ideas. By the way, 80% of improvement we found, potential for improvement, actually comes from front lines. They're the people closest to it. They see the jobs, they see the problems, they see things their bosses can't. And so 80% is there. When you start going after that 80%, next slide, we have seen improvement rates of 10 to 15% a year compounded annually. That really adds up to quite a bit. Next slide, please. All right, finding number 3. And here it's kind of funny because we're starting to overlap into some areas that we've talked about. Amanda, for example, at CDOT talked about and so did John, talked about the spectrum of different types of problems. What we found was there's a full spectrum of tools that are needed, tools and techniques that are needed, all different types for all different types of problems. Things to handle the just do it's to handling the complex things that are a campaign. Next slide, please. Generally, when we looked across our organizations, the best of them had sort of 3 areas of ideas. They had, or of approaches to ideas. First of all, they had approaches to handle large numbers of smaller frontline ideas quickly and efficiently. Okay, you need a system for this. It's not a one-off. You start handling them one-off. They need to be handled close to the front lines, where the decisions are made close to the front lines. They need to be quick and easily processed, because you need to handle a lot of them. There should be a lot of them. You want a lot of them. Okay, you also need the mid-level projects, the mid-sized problems. Usually deal with process level things. You're going to improve a process. We're talking about like an A3 project, a Lean Six Sigma project. We're talking about maybe a rapid improvement event. Tools to solve that. York had a very creative, York region of Canada had a very creative system they called the iLab process, facilitation process, where they got folks together. It's where the right people getting together with a little bit of resources and a little bit of time can solve the problem. Then the last area are the complex system level problems. That's more like a campaign, which actually includes a lot of the other issues. You've got a lot of problems that are often interconnected, and you've got it's a much more problematic issue. So that needs clout, it needs more management, top management support, it needs resources, and that usually happens over a long period of time. Now, next slide. Give you an example. One of our favorite examples comes from New Brunswick. New Brunswick has probably one of the better statewide systems. It's just not the dots, it's all elements of the state's activity. And they actually have 6 different levels they work at. They work at deliverology. I don't know if you're familiar with deliverology. It was Tony Blair's in England. It's the big moves, big stuff focused on improving. And then for the stuff that is not big transgovernmental stuff, you have value stream mapping, Lean Six Sigma, rapid improvement events going down, waste walks and daily management. The waste walks and daily management are very close to your just do it's. That's at the front line level. And they're moving, so they have defined 6 different levels they work at. Next slide. Fourth, one of the interesting things about this is improvement activity at all levels took advantage of frontline knowledge and expertise. Think about this for a second. Todd talked about trust. I'm talking about trust and engagement. Okay. If you look at where knowledge is in an organization. Friedrich Hayek, the award-winning economist, had a piece where he talked about this. The people at the top, what kind of knowledge do they have? They have aggregate knowledge. They have the knowledge of everyone reporting out to them and simplified, combined, and it's at the top level. They need that for strategic, big picture stuff. But when it comes to actual improvements, the people at the bottom of the organization are in the best place to see that. They have the specific knowledge of time and place, as Hayek would say. In other words, they can see the problems better because they're working with them every day, and they can come up with simple solutions to solve them. That's your just do it ideas. Now, how do we merge those two? And there's some interesting ways we've seen that done. One is the York iLab process, which basically in a matter of 2-3 hours gets, 50, 100 even frontline employees together to solve a problem that is normally thought of in management domain, but it's a structured way of going through and getting their input and their ideas and solving a problem. We saw our friends at New Brunswick use Lean Six Sigma to solve a problem which all of you probably experienced, where your vehicles need parts for maintenance. And they had some 36 different parts departments across the state, garages with parts, plus another 55 satellite operations. So totally they got parts spread out all over the place. And yet at the same time, they're constantly pulling a vehicle in and not having the part they need and having them to wait for it. So what they did was they got together and mostly with teams of frontline folks across the state, totally changed the process to make it streamlined, simplified, handle more, they dropped their inventory from 15 million to 5 million dollars, Canadian dollars, and also reduced by 80% the waiting time for parts. But the idea is you needed that frontline insight because they were the ones dealing with the problem every day. You get consultants or management in there or experts, and they impose solutions which may or may not work. You get the frontline folks involved in the discussion, and all of a sudden the solutions don't only work, but you don't have to sell them because they're already sold because the voice of frontline is already in there. Next slide. We have a lot more in this. I had to go quickly because our time is limited, and I'll just give you a taste. But basically, I think we still have some time for some questions. By the way, the book is not out yet. It was supposed to be, but guess what? COVID slows everything down. This is 2 years late so far. And Gary has been very patient with me on some of his advice on the book, but it's been a long time coming. It's finally available July 12th. There is a special site that has been set up by the publisher at 30% off. I don't know what that magic handshake is yet. I'm going to find out in a week or two. So contact me if you're interested. I've got a website coming that is probably a couple weeks away yet. It's dmschroeder.com. And by the way, I'm going to be doing a number of book tours where I'm going to be going to different places across different government organizations across the country. If you want to participate, if you want me to drop in and talk to your people, give a talk to your folks, set up something special or just to your team, let me know and I'll see if I can arrange it. Starts this fall, probably goes through the winter. Of course, in the winter, I think I'm going to go south. Doesn't that make sense? Anyways, contact me, dean.schroeder@valpo.edu. Thank you very much. And I hope I haven't thrown too much at you too fast.
Dean, appreciate that, and always appreciate the findings from your research. We have a moment or two for questions. We have one more session, a quick session, and then we'll have an open forum for anything. Dean mentioned Arizona DOT as part of clearly part of the research. I put in the chat pane some information. ADOT always shares about its improvements. And we have a link to their most recent newsletter, which features Kismet Weiss, a longtime TLF member here. And we also know that we'll, for those of you that have been asking me, we will post the presentation as well as the recording sometime within the next week on the Lien Interchange website. Is there anybody that wants to unmute and ask Dean a question or two here? I don't see any questions actually coming in from the chat pane. Anybody? All right, well, Dean, stick around. We'll have the open forum here in a session in a moment. Courtney, if you could go next. This marks our 10th year, or very close, in a few weeks, 10th year of the Transportation Lien Forum. So we're celebrating that today. Next. How did this start? I came on to CDOT about in 2011, and always in process improvement, but never in state government. And I found that in Colorado, there were two drivers for excellence in state government. Next. One of them is what we call our SMART Act, State Measurement for Accountable, Responsible, and Responsive and Transparent Government, which says we need to incorporate lean continuous improvement to increase government efficiency. And everybody that's been speaking today has been talking about the efforts to do that and ensure that state employees receive training in operational excellence. And we live by our values. I've got our values in back of us, including the excellence value. And excellence value says we're leaders and problem solvers, continuously improving our products and services. That's the exact definition of lean. And I had no idea how to do that in government. And Dean had not published his book, and I hadn't talked to anybody yet. So next. So I started reaching out. And there are a lot of wonderful people in government that I talked to during 2011 and 12. And actually, in the middle part of 2012, we got 3 states online at the same time. We got Tennessee, and you see a list of people there, including Greg Spradley, who's here today on the call. We had Lita Clavins and Sam McKeeman from the state of Maine, and Lita is retired, but she's actually on the call today too, which is great. Greg and Lita, thanks. And then myself and a number of folks from CDOT. We had just a terrific time. You can see the original meeting invitation there. At CDOT, we shared about how we were improving one of our permitting processes. The other states shared what they were improving, and guess what? We all had the same issues, but we were at different stages of maturity of trying to address them. We were a bit farther ahead on permitting. Some of the other states were farther ahead on some other things. We had just the best time sharing. And it wasn't video. It was low tech. We were doing this on the telephone, and we still had a great time doing this. So it's terrific. You can see the star phone that used to sit on my desk. And we had such a good time. We said, you know what, let's invite some other states. So we had 5 states in September of 2012. Arizona joined us and Minnesota joined us. We had a terrific session then. So we decided we'd actually go in October. We invited Ohio. I know we have some folks from Ohio on today. Thanks. And Washington State. We had our 4th session in January. We invited even more people, New Hampshire and Nebraska and Iowa and Wisconsin. 2013. It was wonderful. Our 5th session, we had more people that got invited, Connecticut, California, Illinois. It was a terrific session, lots of great sharing. And we decided we actually try out video teleconferencing. It wasn't quite as advanced as we've got today, but we had our first session with audio and slides, video teleconferencing, featuring the Highways Agency, which morphed to Highways England, which is now the National Highways in England. And we had a terrific session where we were calling ourselves at the time the Forum for Lean Process Improvement in Governmental Highway and Transportation Organizations. Quite a mouthful, quite a mouthful. 10 years later, we've morphed to a shorter name, Transportation Lean Forum, and every place in green is places where we currently have members. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it very much. All the participation in the past 10 years to build this wonderful community of practice. Our older name, as we pointed out, was quite a mouthful. So we morphed that in 2016 to Transportation Lean Forum, taking the advice of some of our wonderful interns that were participating at the time to make it easier to say, easier to have an identity. And there have been so many other great teleconferences in that time, including this session today. So thank you everyone who's participated. Thank you everyone who's presented in the past. Many of those of you online have presented in the past. To encourage the community sharing between sessions, we launched the Lean Interchange website in 2013, and that's still active, and that's where we will post today's presentation and today's recording. And we encourage people to post other things. We have a lot of tools there that have been shared by various folks across the 10 years. We added a group on LinkedIn for the Transportation Lien Forum. You can see a posting from David Jones in the state of Nebraska featuring some of the improvements they made there. So I don't think David's on today, but I know there's some Nebraska folks. Thanks. So that's another way that we can connect. We've added a Transportation Lien Forum newsletter during the past few years. Our intrepid interns are the editors-in-chief on that to, again, encourage the sharing and supporting each other across the distances that we have. And we actually are archiving all of the presentations on the fairly new Transportation Lien Forum YouTube channel too. So it's 10 years of Transportation Lien Forum. Again, thank you to everybody who's participated. You know, I think that Greg and Lita might be online. Do you, if so, do you want to unmute and say anything about that very first session that you participated in back in June 2012?
Hey, Gary, this is Greg.
Hi, Greg.
Just to say we've come an awfully long way, and to see the strides that this forum has made, and so many states and other government agencies, transportation agencies have benefited from everybody else's work, and the sharing of information is just incredible. And at the time when we started this thing, I wouldn't have believed where it has gone, but I just want to congratulate you and everybody on this for the knowledge that we're spreading, and the collaboration and cooperation that you've created with this forum, and we really appreciate being a part of it.
Thank you for your kind thoughts, Greg, and right back at you. Thanks for all of your participation over the years. Lita, I think you're online too. If you can unmute, do you have a few thoughts?
Well, I do. Along with Greg, I'm really, really impressed with the forum, and also Gary, I have to say, with how you've led this effort. It is absolutely amazing that not only does it exist, but that it's actually growing and becoming fuller and much more active, and is truly international. Is global, which of course is, I think, rather important. But I have to give a lot of the credit to you and your leadership. So thank you very much.
Lita, thank you for your very kind words, and thank you for your participation over the past decade. Greg, Lita, thanks. Everybody, thanks. And the best is yet to come. The next 10 years, from 2022 to 2032, what can we accomplish? What should we accomplish? So what should this be in the next 10 years, or really in the next month, the next year, the next 2 years? What should we do? We actually don't have time today for that discussion, but we'd like to queue that up for July. And to queue that up for July, when we send out the notes for the session, which will include the link, of course, to the Transportation Lien Forum's Lien Interchange website, we're going to send out a short survey. What should we actually be doing during the next 10 years? So help us. We're going to put that in front of the Transportation Lien Forum Steering Committee. That'll help us steer the direction of the every other month webinars, or perhaps we go to a different cadence on that. The newsletter, the TLF YouTube site, the Lien Interchange Forum itself. It'll help us help each other in this community practice. So look forward to that during the invitation for the next meeting and for the summary of this meeting. All right, thanks, folks. Thanks again, and Greg, appreciate your hand clap there. Thank you, and thank you for all the kind notes in the chat pane too. Courtney, next. So this is our time. We've got probably about 10 minutes here. Are there additional questions, thoughts, comments you have for our presenters, or things you want to share? Successes. Your successes might be somebody's current challenge. We would love to hear from all of you. So I'm going to shut up. If you can't unmute, we'll read from the chat pane, and I encourage you to unmute. What's on your mind? It's your time. It's your open forum.
There was one question earlier that got missed for the first presentation. It was, do you have a strategic goal related to employee engagement? If you do, you could tie training hours to it. So I guess more of a suggestion, but do something after the first presentation.
So Amanda, John, do you want to field that one?
Absolutely. Yes, thank you. And I did actually respond to that too after our presentation. But yes, we do have our strategic plan, and some of our themes that match up really well with that are innovation, customer service, because within that, the strategic themes, we're focusing both on internal customer service and external, and we do a lot with employee engagement through a number of different methods, I guess, at PennDOT. So excellent suggestion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Who's next?
Gary, we've got a question here from Mustafa Muhammad Ali. How do you address why fix it if it ain't broke, especially among peers who have been doing the same thing for years, especially when the ideas come from a new hire?
And Mustafa, that probably is addressed to, I suspect, either Dean or perhaps to Todd, who was mentioning some of this. Do any of you want to try to field that one?
I can give it a thought.
Okay.
Okay, it is one of the toughest things, especially the biggest problem hidden in that is not fix it, don't fix, why do we fix it if it's not broken, is it's complacency. They have not been listening to their improvement ideas for so long that there's an issue of why bother. So it is an issue, and basically the best way of doing it is by seeing it. If, for example, you have you're in a situation where the improvement is being done somewhere else, if you can take those people and show it to them physically, talking to peers, not management, not leadership, but peers, is the best way to overcome that resistance, to see how other people are doing things, and also to show them other parts of the organization where the frontline folks or the people that are making the changes are making progress in getting energy. So it's almost, you have to show them, not tell them.
All right, that's great, Dean. And Mustafa, hopefully that addresses things. And Zofia, you have your hand up.
Hi there. Yeah, thank you so much. And I apologize that I had several meetings. I wasn't able to join until very recently. I think this is an amazing initiative. I'm in the, so we have a Lien, I'm in Texas at Texas A&M University. We started an initiative when COVID hit to actually take Lien games online. And the reason we've done this is the show versus tell really matters. When people play the Lien simulations, they can, you kind of do one round where you have everybody play and they collect metrics, and then you introduce one Lien intervention, and then you play it again and you collect metrics. And we find there's huge numbers of aha moments when that happens, because it's very low risk too, which is very nice because it's fun to play. You could do them in person, you could do them we're in fact doing some up in we have a conference up in Las Vegas that's coming up. But anyway, if anybody is ever interested in any of that stuff, we specialize in that. Texas A&M is one of the largest providers of Lien simulations, new Lien simulations in the world at this point that have been published. And so we of course develop new ones based on the needs of whatever that industry is that has a very specific need. So we're always excited about things like that and making sure that whatever we do is very relevant to specific needs. Anyway, like I said, when COVID hit, we had to do this. Everybody around the world teaching Lien had to take it online, and so we've done that as well. Which we do it over Zoom, and we put people in breakout rooms and all that kind of cool stuff. So, anyway, we find that the simulations. And I did a TED talk a couple years ago on Lien simulations. If you just look up my name, and it kind of explains some of the ones that we do. And I'm guessing there are people. I don't know if it's part of the Department of Transportation culture to do these games, but if not, that's something I'd be happy to share with anybody. So
all right, thanks for that, Sophia. And I know that you had a somewhat related question. How might university researchers help with some of our goals that we have for Transportation Lien Forum? First of all, keep sending us really terrific students. We have, here at CDOT, we have terrific interns. Please keep them coming. They're great folks. And a second thing might be to, actually take some of the stuff. We do try to post things publicly for the Transportation Lien Forum. We're always encouraging, public discourse too. Maybe there's some things that you see either in today's presentation or in other presentations that might be something to spur some discussions, and perhaps we build that into one of our future sessions. So when we send out our the next 10 years, what should we do survey, please include that. I know that there are a couple of the researchers online. Nigel's online. Nigel, thanks for being here many years. Dean, thanks. So we encourage the research community to engage here too. All right, we have time for a couple more. Becca, you have another one?
Yes, Matthew Pacheco said in the chat, how do you celebrate innovations that are more process-oriented and difficult to articulate why it is better? It is difficult to get the implementers to go on tour and advocate for their change.
That's a great one, and thank you, Matthew, from here at CDOT. That's really for the community. Anybody want to try that one? If you do, go ahead and unmute, or go ahead and put something in the chat pane.
Hey Gary, this is Todd. I'll give a little bit of a stab because we've had several process items that have come through and have been winners through our innovation space. And while the tactile application of a new tool or a new way of doing a particular job is easier to relate, sometimes the processes are the ones that are creating heartburn that nobody necessarily wants to talk about, right? So if we're having issues in the procurement world, or we're having issues in contract closeout world, or whatever that is delaying things, people are already starting to try to figure out, if they see that heartburn or they're working with that, they're trying to figure out how to make it better. So if you can make those processes and process-oriented improvements relatable to the folks that not necessarily are in it every day, those are really important. But the people who are being touched by it, by those processes, it becomes everybody's issue, right, or everybody's solution. So an example we have is within our travel group. There's a lot of angst around a lot of forms, a lot of different processes and whatnot. But when our travel group came to us with a process improvement, it was met with a little bit of cynicism and a little bit of sarcasm. Yeah, well, here we go. But what they did was they explained the problem up front, made it relatable to everybody, because those who have traveled have dealt with it. Then they created and showed the solution and the why behind the solution. And once people understand that quote unquote why and why it's relevant to them, it grows roots and it grows momentum. So that's how we've done it, is try to make it relatable back to not just the folks that are in those processes every day, but the folks that are touched with it in and around that process, maybe not every day, but certainly quite often. So I hope that helps.
Great, thanks, Todd. I appreciate that. Being mindful of time, we've got about 3 minutes left, so I'm sure we've got lots of discussions we could be having. I want to, first of all, thank all of our presenters. Thank you. Appreciate the richness that you bring to our community. Courtney, next. We do just a little bit of cross-selling. There is a sister community that cleaved off of Transportation Lien Forum called the Public Sector Change Practitioners, or PSCP Community of Practice. It's not just for transportation folks, clearly. It's for anybody in the public sector. The next webinar is on the 21st. You can see the QR code. It's free. It's a terrific community to talk about the people side of improvement and innovation. And I know I'm going to be there, and I hope that you can be there too. Next. Our next forum will be in July, a date yet to be determined. Our friends from the Nebraska DOT have offered to be one of the presenters. If you want to be a presenter too there, let me know, and we'll get that engaged. We'll be starting our second decade, and we hope to have results from the survey that we're going to be sending out also about your thoughts about what we do next month, next year, and into the next 10 years. So thank you on that, and please do reply to the survey. We'll include that in the next forum. Next. And just to reprise, why do we have a transportation lien forum anyways? I love the thought that Margaret Mead has. We are the people trying to change the world. We do it in small ways, and collectively we can make big impacts, and collectively we can support each other. Next. Thank you again. This is the end of the forum for May 2022, and our second decade is now officially launched. I look forward to hearing from you online and live during the July session. Thanks, folks. Let's log out. Bye now.